Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. I don't have any music this morning, doing this live on the road, but thank you for being with us as we get started. We'll read Genesis chapter 29, beginning in verse 1, the story of Jacob marrying his wife Leah and then Rachel. This is the word of God for us this morning. Then Jacob went on to his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone in the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." And he said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." And he said to them, Is it well with him?" And they said, "It is well. And see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." And while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to them, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Now let's stop right there this morning. This is the story of Jacob on his way to Laban's house so that he can find a wife. That is what Rebekah sent him off to do. She wanted him to go off and find a wife. She wanted him to go off and find someone that he could love and start a family with. She also wanted to get him away from Esau. Esau was threatening to kill Jacob, and I believe Esau would have carried it out. Jacob had deceived Esau. He stole his birthright, and then he deceived Esau and went before his father and took his blessing. Esau was angry at everyone, and so Esau would have probably killed Jacob. Rebekah knew that, so she sent him off. On his way, he has this encounter with God, and then when he gets to the land, he finds a place where he is looking for water. And Jacob wants to get water at the well. He knows that there are those who are bringing shepherds together, or shepherds bringing their flock together. They're at the well. They'll remove the stone and they'll all drink, and then they'll cover the stone back up. They'll cover the well back up. And so Jacob is thirsty. He's sitting there. He's waiting. They won't give him water. But then Rachel shows up. Jacob takes matters into his own hands. He removes the stone, and he has this interaction with Rachel, who is the shepherdess of her father Laban. And so there is this immediate connection between Jacob and Rachel. And it is through Rachel that he connects with his mother's family, It is through Rachel he connects with Laban and the rest of the family. And so we see what God is doing here. Remember, we look at history in the Bible. We look at these stories, these narratives. They're not just cool stories. They're not just stories that tell us events of things that happened with reference to the patriarchs. They are revelatory in that they show us how God is working with his people and continues to work with his people. And in this story, we see that God is doing an amazing thing as he is bringing Jacob into contact with Rachel, who will be his wife. Rachel will be one of the mothers of the 12 sons of Jacob. But we see how God is working to preserve the life of Jacob, though he is deceitful, though he does not always do what he is supposed to do. In fact, he does the complete opposite of that. But God is working to preserve his life, because that's what God does. God is a God who preserves the life of his people. God is a God who forgives his people for their sins. God is a God who accomplishes his purposes and his will in all things, and works through what seem to be to us strange and unusual circumstances, and even uses crooked sticks to draw straight lines. You and I are all crooked sticks, and God uses us to accomplish his will and his purposes, just as he used Jacob. There's a specific purpose and call on Jacob's life that's different than your call and different than my call, but yet the same thing is true. The same truths are there, that God is working through us to accomplish his purposes. He works through all things, good and bad, to accomplish his purposes for his glory and for the good of his people. And so we have to be mindful of that. And so we see this connection. We see this meeting of Jacob and Rachel at this well. We see Rebekah sending him off to find this wife, and now God has placed her in his presence, and God brought them together. You know, when we think about weddings, we think about weddings of Christians, we should always think about the context of God is bringing these two people together, and he's worked throughout their lives to bring them together. And sometimes he brings them together in the most unusual and unexpected circumstances, just like this. Jacob's just going about his way, following the will of God, goes to the land, and there at the well he meets Rachel, and through Rachel he connects to Laban, and then ultimately he will marry Rachel, and he will work for Rachel, and God will work through that. Now he'll have to deal with the consequences of his sin. He'll have to go through a trial. He'll have to work for 7 years and then marry Leah and then work 7 more years for Rachel. But we see God working, and God brought these two together in their circumstances throughout their lives, because that's how God works and that's how God operates. So you guys be encouraged with that today. Again, no music. We'll be back with music tomorrow. God bless you. This is the Chester ARP Church Devotional Podcast. Thanks for being with us. Trust God. We'll see you soon.